I think actually the late Joan Hickson, OBE, synonymous with the character, was 78 when she first played Miss Marple, and Mr. Pritchard described her 8 years in the role as the gold standard. So you have to have your club card, and you always get a nice story. Little Joshua Jefferson battling for life in hospital. There was one miracle nobody could have foreseen. When his identical twin, called Edward,
continue for 1.5 miles.
The boys started to get stronger and stronger. With his brother by his side, Joshua battled through 2 operations and was finally able to leave hospital. And this year, the twins marked their first Christmas together at home with relieved parents Martin and Adele. How cute! They're cute as buttons, they really are. So Mr. Jefferson, who's a police crime scene investigator, said it certainly helped Joshua having his brother there in the cot. It's really settled him. There is such a strong bond between them. How cute! There's a picture of them in hospital, and then a picture of them out now. And of course, as children are, they get so carried away with Christmas and the tree and the baubles and the lights and everything else. They absolutely love it. They absolutely love it. And it's always nice to see children enjoying Christmas, because I think Christmas was invented for children. I don't think it's for adults. I think we enjoy it, but I think definitely it's definitely for adults. Steve, I've just enjoyed scrambled egg with 2 slices of black pudding. Oh, no. Scrambled egg, yes, but with smoked salmon. Smoked salmon and scrambled egg's quite nice. Or just sort of scrambled egg on toast is quite nice. Steve, saw it, silver gold colour, says Alex. No, absolutely not. I wouldn't go for anything in silver gold. Gold, I can't think of anything worse actually. Although I did see a roll some years ago and everything had been gold plated. All the chrome on it had been gold plated, and I remember thinking it sort of looked vulgar, but in quite a nice way. And I did see a Rolls Phantom outside the was it the Hilton? Must be one of those other hotels. And it was purple, and the interior was purple as well. I remember thinking, oh dear, it didn't quite look right. Didn't quite look right. I'm a bit funny about the interiors of cars. For me, they've always got to be cream or white. Cream I prefer, given the choice, with sort of trim. But this was all purple inside, and the carpet was all purple as well. I remember thinking, I don't think I could drive anything like that. Definitely not. Hollyoaks' Nadine Mulkerrin is expecting a new baby with co-star Rory Douglas-Speed. She plays Cleo McQueen in the Channel 4 soap. Again, not a clue. I have no idea who these people are. Not a clue. You do see them. If you ever get them on the Come Dancing programmes or the Dancing on Ice, and they go, here's so-and-so, so-and-so, and I always go, I've no idea who it is. Must be somebody from Hollyoaks. And I'm generally quite right, actually. The unvaccinated people who could be visited by door-to-door COVID jabbers. That's quite a good enough, just in case you're too sort of bone idle to actually get out there and do it. And then it's a case of, you know, where do we go from here? The Queen giving the soaps a thrashing is the best news I've heard in ages, only going to prove that she is as big today as she's ever been. That's it for this morning. Thank you very much indeed. I shall be back with you tomorrow morning at the usual time, 4, and it's still the public holiday. And don't forget, you can download my podcast if you go to the LBC website, lbc.co.uk. So back with you tomorrow morning at 4. Coming up at 10 this morning on LBC, it's going to be David Lammy. But right now on LBC, it's Andrew Castle.
Steve, good morning to you. Enjoy your Wetherspoons breakfast for $3.99, whichever one you go for.
In 300 yards, keep right to continue towards Tuns Lane, A355.
Today, that's where they will all decide if you'll be allowed to do this on New Year's Eve. His guns and not introduce any more legal restrictions. What's your view? Are we being fed a diet of
keep right
data? We'll discuss that a little bit later on. Plus this.
Police investigate a video following the arrest of a man on Christmas Day with a crossbow at Windsor Castle. And RBC's Rachel Venables with the story.
And there's damning polling out showing Boris Johnson could lose his seat if there was a general election right now, let alone the Conservatives being trounced by Labour. So all that and much more after the news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock. The Prime Minister will decide if any further restrictions should be introduced in England after reviewing new coronavirus data today. Boris Johnson is expected to meet with ministers to discuss possible ways to try to minimise the spread of COVID. The chair of
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to London, Heathrow Airport.
There's going to be less compliance from certain sections of the public who won't want to go into another lockdown or more restrictions. Possibly going to be even more difficult to police this time round. Officers are really stretched. They're going to be working long hours over the festive period and they will be working hard and obviously missing out on that time with their families.
In Scotland, groups of people meeting is now limited to 3 households, and nightclubs are being forced to close, as in Wales and Northern Ireland. The family of a former footballer who died after being kicked in the head and tasered by an officer have had an apology from the chief constable.
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
Died in Telford in 2016. Our reporter in the West Midlands is Mitch Rushton.
Earlier this year, PC Benjamin Monk was jailed for 8 years for manslaughter after a court ruled he had used excessive force in arresting Mr Atkinson. 6 months on, the new West Mercia Police Chief Constable's written to his family apologising, saying a uniform does not grant officers immunity to behave unlawfully. Pippa Mills also praised the family for their strength and dignity.
The Metropolitan Police is investigating a video appearing to show someone holding a crossbow following a security breach at Windsor Castle. The masked figure speaks to the camera in a distorted voice. An intruder was found...
Continue on M4 for 9 miles.
The teenager was arrested and detained under the Mental Health Act. The chief executive of OVO has warned of an enormous crisis in 2022 if nothing's done to curb rising gas and electricity prices. Energy bosses are due to meet the business secretary Kwasi Kwarteng later to discuss how to address the rapidly rising wholesale gas prices. It's thought they're likely to ask for tax cuts and relaxation of green levies. Tens of thousands of travellers in the US have had their holiday plans cancelled after flights were grounded because of staff shortages due to coronavirus. More than 700 flights entering, leaving or flying within the US were called off yesterday. Globally, 2,200 were cancelled. And England have bowled Australia all out for 267 runs on day 2 of the 3rd Ashes Test. The hosts have a lead of 82 in Melbourne, now that both sides have completed their first innings. The weather, some northern areas of the UK will be brighter with coastal showers, cloudy through central parts and patchy rain in the south edging north. Mild except for parts of northern Scotland, a high of 13 Celsius. From Global's newsroom, I'm Holly Harris.
10, 9, 8.
Come on, pick up the pace a bit.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And let's bring on New Year's Eve right now, because there's an incredible 10, yes 10, UK millionaires guaranteed with Euro Millions on New Year's Eve. And that, my friends, really is dream come true money. Get the new year off to a dream start with Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play on app, online and in store. Account terms, rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Andrew Purcell.
Hello, very good morning to you. It is 3 minutes past 7 on Monday the 27th of December. Listen, I hope you had a very good Christmas and an excellent Boxing Day as well. We had quite a few people around yesterday. I'm not sure if that's going to be possible very, very shortly, although it has to be said, as Boris Johnson is going to be briefed on the latest COVID data today, I think with Mr. Whitty and Mr. Valance. I'm not sure whether we're going to soon be able to meet a lot of people even under our own roof. What does it feel like to you? Do you think that further COVID restrictions are required in England, as they've seen in Wales and Scotland and in Northern Ireland as well? In Wales, 6 people only can meet in pubs, cinemas and restaurants, 30 people at indoor events, 50 people at outdoor events. That's a cap there. No fans at sports at all. Social distancing of 2 metres recommended. Nightclubs being closed then in Wales, so that's the picture there. In Scotland, indoor events of 100 people standing or 200 seated. Outdoor events capped at 500. Hogmanay events cancelled in Northern Ireland. The rule of 6 is back. Indoor standing at events is not permitted. Socialising, just 3 households, and nightclubs closed as well. In England yesterday, I saw a report. It says that Boris Johnson was yet to announce new restrictions, almost as though there was an inevitability to it. Is that the way you see it? 0345 6060 973. Professor Dean Pillay is with me, Professor of Virology at UCL, member of the Independent SAGE Group. Professor Pillay, good morning to you.
Good morning to you and your listeners.
Listen, Jenny Harries the other day, the Chief Executive of the UK HSA, she said Omicron remains a serious threat, and it's the most significant threat since the start of the pandemic. As a virologist, is that the way it is?
Well, what has changed compared to this time last year, if you recall, before we were all getting vaccines, is there was something like a 10% chance that if you got infected, you would end up in hospital, and a 10% chance of those individuals unfortunately dying. We're not in that position at all now. Through vaccination, we're really protected, those of us who are vaccinated and boosted. But the big problem now becomes, because this Omicron is just so damn infectious, I'm sure you and your listeners all know of Christmas events that have been derailed because someone has tested positive and so forth, is that even with a reduced risk of hospitalisation, then the NHS, the numbers are creeping up. Clearly Boris Johnson will be briefed on those data today, and I'm sure it is that the NHS data that will determine the steps that he will take. But of course we have been too late in this in England. Those numbers are going up and the NHS is in crisis, and of course many staff are off as well. So I think that's going to determine what our response will be.
But we don't know yet, do we? It's all very well having 100,000 cases of COVID, be it Omicron, which I think is dominating now. I don't know, because we haven't had the numbers for more than 2 days. We don't know whether cases are leading to hospitalizations yet, and in fact we've been left rather confused as members of the public about how long it takes between a case and a possible hospital admission, because there's been some misinformation about that as well.
Well, of course, again, most of the data we have about that time to hospitalisation comes from earlier on in the pandemic, where we had less vaccination, and in general, it would take, following someone getting infected, if they became severely ill, maybe 10 days needing to go to hospital, and then, a week to months after that possibly in intensive care, so all very difficult. But with Omicron, it's a different variant. It replicates to a different extent, and of course, against the backdrop of vaccination, it becomes difficult. Having said that, I think around now, we will be in a position to see the impact of the early phase, which was about a month, 3 weeks ago. So I think the data will be there now to be able to infer whether the NHS is struggling and will struggle, because of course what that means, if it is starting to struggle, we know that with 100,000 cases a day now, which is much more than we had 2 weeks ago, then we can predict what's going to happen in 2, 3, 4 weeks from now.
Well, okay, well now we come on to predictions, scenarios and forecasts, which have been relentlessly pessimistic, relentlessly downbeat, and whilst everybody understands the pressures and the stresses that the NHS is under, and is always under, winter after winter, of course, we have to understand that there's a cost on the other side of restricting people's social movements, their retail activity, their social interactions. I never ever see an analysis of the harm that is done with a lockdown or lockdown by stealth or any sorts of measures in this regard. I never see an analysis of that side. Don't you think we should?
Well, you make a very good point, and of course it'd be very one-dimensional just to focus purely on saying we've got to get rid of the infection. Having said that, if you look around the world, and I think now we come to the end of 2022, we can look with a sort of higher level view of what's happened. Those countries that undertook a much more stringent lockdown, particularly early on, much more stringent than we had, their economies have done far better.
Not strictly true, Professor Pillay, not strictly true.
Well, if you look at the Far East, if you look at
Sweden's overall excess mortality in 2021 is the lowest in Europe, according to The Economist. Education, employment, mental health are all in far better shape.
In 2 miles, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
Sweden, of course, there will be exceptions to what I've said, but very reputable analyses at a global level overall have shown very clearly that particularly economies that are similar size and bigger to the UK have done well. Now, we are now far later down the line, of course, and so the question now is what stringencies we need to have now. And again, taking a big view, because we've got to be thinking about, I agree with you, what does the future year hold for us? Where do we want to be in 2022? Are we going to keep going, from emergency lockdown to release and so on? And I think that the problem here is the narrative about getting back to normal, what normal means. It's really interesting that without major constrictions at the moment in England, people are self-isolating. They're self-censoring themselves. Many Christmases were held with smaller number of people. Look at football, which was open in England, the Premier League. The crowds were down. Even those who had bought tickets many thousands.
In other words, we already have a lockdown, self-imposed.
Well,
people are making decisions for themselves and for those around them, including loved ones.
Exactly, and the question is, and of course people are worried. They're doing that because they're worried about the health of themselves and their family, and of course the knock-on effect of the NHS. The issue is that enough? And of course at this stage, you're right, is that if decisions were to be taken, they should have been taken earlier. You say that we should wait for data, but infectious diseases are one of those things where
have we seen the
now
peak?
will predict. Well, that's a really interesting question. We've seen in other countries such as Denmark and in South Africa that the rise, the exponential rise has started to slow down or even stop. There are many reasons why that is. Those two countries are very different in terms of level of vaccination.
In a quarter of a mile, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
I think the cases that are reported today, for instance, are going to be so skewed by the holiday period and changing and testing, and there's a limit. I know many people who are unable to get lateral flow tests delivered to them, for instance. So that's going to skew the numbers at the moment.
Exit at junction 3.
If we see those numbers starting to come down, then clearly we're looking in a month or 2 months' time of a start of relaxation.
In a quarter of a mile, at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the 4th exit onto the Parkway, A312.
Age group 713. Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown is with me, Conservative MP for the Cotswolds, Treasurer of the 22 Committee, Deputy Chair of the Public Accounts Committee. Sir Geoffrey, Happy Christmas, Happy New Year, and how is 2022 going to be? Is Boris going to lock us all down again?
Well, good morning, Anne. Happy New Year to you and to all your listeners. And gosh, doesn't just demonstrate straight why we don't need to have imposed on us at the moment. Look at the texts. They're well up in all the UK.
We're actually struggling with your line quite significantly at the moment. We're going to try and call you and get a better line because we want to hear what you have to say. Do we have Michael in Birmingham on our phone lines as well? Perhaps no, we don't have him yet. But in that case, I'll just lay something out for you. So you've got the situation in Wales, you've got Scotland, you've got Northern Ireland. Each have imposed different restrictions, rules, and guidance. In England, it was said that we were yet to announce new restrictions. I'm asking you quite a simple question here. Do you see it as an inevitability that we are going to go into lockdown?
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway.
Parliament hasn't been recalled, and Cabinet, it hasn't been suggested to them that they need to get together because it would have to go through Parliament. Sir Geoffrey, are you back?
I am, yes.
That's
Continue on the Parkway for 1 mile.
Is it an inevitability that we're going to see lockdown announced by Boris Johnson either now or in the next few days?
Well, if you listen to all that the professor said, all these medics always try and make out the worst possible case. But actually, if you look at the infectivity rates amongst the entire population of the UK in every category, in tests for antibodies, it's well over the 90%. The latest figures we had before Christmas showed that the number of cases in hospital was relatively stable, and that's the main measure why we need any further lockdowns, is to deal with infectivity in hospitals, and I didn't see that before Christmas. So I hope the Prime Minister will be very, very cautious before introducing further measures. And there was one other really important thing that emerged with that interview with the professor, is that people are taking matters into their own hands and are being very cautious themselves. And that is the best answer in this situation. Let people make their own decisions.
Downing Street will have to recall Parliament to vote on any measures. You'll be on all the WhatsApp groups. You'll be in communication with people. Is there anything that we all should know?
Well, there's no. I can tell you, as of this moment, there are no. I've received no notifications for recall of Parliament. Of course, what the government could do is make further measures advisory. But actually, after the last legal set of measures, which we voted on, and a lot of us actually rejected, the people have actually been very, very cautious themselves. And that has had a huge knock-on effect in two areas. You were saying you'd had no evidence that further lockdowns had an effect on people. There is some evidence I've seen this morning that if people are locked down and isolating in their own houses, a third of them say that they've had some ill effect.
Well, Sir Geoffrey, I didn't say that. I've seen a terrible and debilitating effect on people who are locked up, can't get on with their lives, go to work, interact.
In a quarter of a mile at Wagoners Roundabout, take the second exit and stay on the Parkway, A312.
And the other thing is that the number of people seated in restaurants at the moment is now at its lowest since last May. So no wonder if there's going to be an effect on the economy. Of course it will if you have further restrictions of any sort, really.
Yeah. Are you the one who collates the letters for a leadership challenge, Sir Geoffrey?
No, that's my chairman, Sir Graham Brady, and he is the paragon of discretion. He won't even tell me, as a fellow officer, how many he received.
Yeah, I bet.
Can I just say one other?
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway. Continue on A312 for 1.5 miles.
Could be our way out of all of this, because large numbers of people are going to be infected by it. But if we're right that it's not as severe as the Delta virus, it means people are getting infected, building up more antibodies, and hopefully that will then produce more resistance in the population, and less people will become seriously ill as a result of it. But that's just an idea.
An announcement expected later on, some sort of communication from Boris Johnson and 10 Downing Street. I wonder what it will be. So Geoffrey Clifton-Bounds, thank you very much indeed. 7:17 is the time. Have you seen enough restrictions in England? Do you think that Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland have got it wrong, and that we, in fact, in England, perhaps have got it right? 0345 6060 973. And how many people are thrown into poverty by these sorts of restrictions? We have a report that says a whole load. We'll discuss that after the news with Holly Harris.
The Prime Minister will decide if any further restrictions should be introduced in England after reviewing new coronavirus data today. The head of West Mercia Police has apologised to the family of former footballer Dalian Atkinson, who died after being tasered during his arrest in 2016. 2,200 flights have been grounded across the world because of shortages among airline staff due to COVID. The weather, rain edging north through the day, feeling mild with a high of 13 Celsius.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. On the M25, only one lane's open on the clockwise exit Slip Road at junction 25 at the A10, and that's because of flooding. In South Kensington, Queensgate is closed both ways, and that's because of an accident. On the Underground, on the Central Line, Chancery Lane station is closed. That's because of a shortage of staff. No service on the Jubilee line today between Wembley Park and Willesden Green, and that's for engineering works. And the Metropolitan line's not running between Wembley Park and Aldgate. Also, major engineering works means that southern trains aren't going to and from Victoria Station, and Great Northern trains aren't running between Finsbury Park and Moorgate.
This is LBC.
The TUI Live Happy sale is here, with thousands of free kids' places available this summer. Splashing sorted. Savings of up to £300 per booking. Dreamy. And huge discounts on over 70 destinations. Here we come. All ATOL protected, so relax and get booking. Do it. Live happy. Booking T's and C's apply, subject to limited availability on selected holidays for a limited time. See website for details.
This is LBC.
There's a revolution happening. A different way to sell your home. All across the country, people are discovering how it feels when you sell your home for free. Really, truly free. With over £1 billion of property sold in the last year, we're rated excellent from over 15,000 reviews on Trustpilot. Find out how you can sell your home for free at strike.co.uk. Strike. Feel free. For verification, visit strike.co.uk/more.
Look forward to flying again as Singapore Airlines brings you Australasia. Explore Australia, New Zealand and beyond on board the world's most awarded airline. Enjoy an unforgettable experience with incredible service and warm hospitality. Flying to
In
Australia
300 yards, turn right onto Rosslyn Avenue.
Book with flexibility today at Singapore Airlines.